Minnesota Vikings special teams were straight booty this year. And we're not even talking about Dan Bailey, who is just a whole nother thing, right? We're talking specifically about the Vikings coverage and return units, and they're just not great, right? It's something that flies under the radar because how often do you think about special teams? You think about the offense and the defense, but no, it's the third phase for a reason, and it still matters just as much. So especially with a head coach like Mike Zimmer, conservative style, field position, field position, field position, and lo and behold, the Viking special teams units, both kick and punt coverage and the returns were biblically bad, like plagues, locusts, firstborn son, 2020 Viking special teams. Not great. So this stat will blow your mind. So the Vikings starting field position this year was at their 25.7 yard line, dead last in the league. Vikings opposing starting field position was at the 33.2 yard line, last in the NFL again. So on average, Vikings opponents started 7.5 yards closer to scoring a touchdown on every single drive. That blows your mind. That's inexcusable, and it's a combination of poor coverage as well as absolute piss poor returns, and also Dan Bailey missing a couple field goals, just planting the other team with great field position, right? Also, you look at last year, the Vikings started at their own 29.6, which is sixth best in the league, as well as the coverage units were actually getting done. They were middle of the pack opponents starting at their own 28.3. By the way, compare this to the 2016 Vikings. Remember, no great shakes. Started off 5-0, but 8-8 Vikings. You had Cordero in his final year here. You had Pete Sherrills. You had Walsh and Cobra Kai. You had the immortal Jeff Locke, and you had Mike Prefer coordinating, right? So they were second in starting field position, 31.2. They were seventh in opposing starting field position, 27.1. Now, yes, this was before the kickoff rule change in 2018, but the rankings matter because the rules are the same for everyone. So the Vikings went from one of the best special teams units in the NFL to dead last this year. Just absolutely atrocious. And special teams is the fastest equalizer. Like, if you have a young team just trying to get their legs underneath them, which the Vikings had for the most part this season, focus on the third unit first. So Zimmer, obviously a Bill Parcells guy, and everywhere that Bill Parcells went, especially in the NFL, the first thing that you do is fix the special teams. You look at the Giants, Patriots, Jets, Cowboys, Dolphins, special teams always had a big emphasis, and Parcells, by and large, always had really good special teams, and notably in the coverage and return units, because it is the fastest way to get competitive. Because think about it. Like, if you start with better field position and they start with worse field position, even if you're not as good on offense and defense, you still have an advantage. You still have a fighting chance that day. And to simplify, so imagine your opponent has to go 75 yards for a touchdown, but you only have to go 67 every single time, right? That matters. And then imagine what happens when your offense and defense gets better, and then you still maintain that advantage. That's why Belichick stresses special teams so damn much, and that's why the Patriots are always good. Even this year, when they're absolutely straight booty everywhere else, we'll get to their return units. But the Vikings simply were not good enough this year to overcome that spot, right? And being dead last in starting field position and dead last in opposing starting field position, like, you can't overcome that even if you're a great team. Like, if the Chiefs somehow, some way had that detriment on special teams, they would struggle. I mean, they might be an 8-8 team, even with Mahomes, even with those great players on defense like Chris Jones and Honey Badger. How amazing is that? I mean, frankly, it might be a miracle that the Vikings won 6 games this year due to the special teams. So what do the Vikings do? Well, you don't specifically draft players for special teams, although you look outside of specialists, which the Vikings should never spend another draft pick on a kicker, punter, long snapper again, or a guy like KJ Osborne, a kick and punt returner who can't kick or punt return. And then you pick up Dan Chisena as a UDFA. And also, I mean, don't dismiss the draining of talent, where Eric Wilson, as a de facto starter this year, spent a lot less time on special teams. Ben Gedeon, out this season, he was a great special teamer as well, even though he wasn't a starter, as well as Jaron Kearse, who was a special teams captain. So you take all that away, replace it with a bunch of young guys, and it's rough. It is rough. It comes down to teaching. It comes down to coaching. It comes down to presenting information and repetition. So Viking special teams coverage issues were very simple things this year. And big returns were sprung by players not maintaining lane discipline, missing tackles, and just trying to play hero ball. And that comes down to coaching. That comes down to, hey, if you see this on film in practice, you see this on film in a game, you chew their asses and you fix it. Otherwise, they get replaced. I mean, they're on the bottom of the rooster for a reason. Churn and burn that thing, right? And also, the two punt blocks versus the Lions were when DJ Wanham had to come in and fill in for Irv Smith at that right guard spot on the punt unit and didn't follow through on assignments, and then that matriculated down in a comedy of errors where everyone else's protection was altered, right? So that comes down to coaching. Getting hurt in games, that happens. I mean, their replacements have to know their jobs, and that's on the coach, that's on the coordinator. And then kick coverage. So it starts and ends with Dan Bailey. So Dan Bailey was tied for the worst in the NFL in kickoff average field position at 28.4 because his 64.5% touchback rate was one of the lowest in the NFL, meaning he's kicking it short with low hang time, and his coverage unit is put at a disadvantage, and opposing teams are starting with elite field position. He simply does not have the leg strength to just boot it out of the back of the end zone consistently anymore. And then punt coverage. I love Britton Skull quit, but Skull has got to quit. He's got to go. So average of 45.1 yards, 19th in the league. Net average of 38.0, 25th. Hang time 4.3 seconds, tied for 20th worst in the league. And also 60.8% of his punts are returned, which is second worst in the NFL, meaning not enough hang time. Coverage units don't make the returner fair catch, and they're able to get a return on. And then also, if you have a breakdown in coverage assignments, then it all adds up. It does, hand in glove. And in the return game, you have to find a returner you can trust. You know, obviously they don't trust Osborne. He was benched 3 times this season. Chad Beebe famously had his issues against Carolina. And the Vikings have only returned 14 punts this year for 49 yards, which is 31st in the NFL. Only the Packers are worse. And 3.5 yards per return is dead last in the league. For comparison, so the Patriots are averaging 16.05 yards per return with Gunnar Olszewski. Nailed it. The former Bemidji State Beaver and Vikings UDFA tryout. We didn't need him. We didn't need him out. And here's what's frustrating. So Gunnar was a DB in college, so the Vikings tried him out at DB, and the Patriots moved him to wide receiver, as they're wont to do, as well as a return guy. I mean, the Vikings couldn't see that that this kid was going to be a pretty special return guy. No one saw that all weekend at UDFA tryouts. No one. It's inexcusable, right? And also, meanwhile, the Vikings, back in the day, remember, everyone tried to cut Marcus Sherrills every single year, but one of the big reasons why he hung around is that the Vikings were consistently in the top 5, even top 3, when Sherrills was here returning. And remember, we talked about this, just securing a fair catch, especially when you're outdoors, especially if they're win, and not losing that hidden yardage of letting it bounce and letting it dribble, letting it do that. That is a huge skill. That is absolutely a huge skill, and I don't think anyone on the Vikings currently has that. So all these hidden yards matter, and the offense has to go a little farther and score, and also the much maligned defense was consistently on a short field, so that all works together. So how do you fix this? Well, you fire Maloof, you fire assistant to the regional special teams coordinator Ryan Ficken, even though he's been here for like 8 years. You fire Nate Kading, the kicking consultant. Scorch earth, completely tear down, rebuild, start over in the special teams unit. Bailey needs competition at minimum. Cut him. I don't care about the cost. Cut him before his like a third of his base $2.7 million base salary becomes fully guaranteed this year. Get it out of here. As well, Skolkwit needs to go. Again, I like him, but a younger, stronger leg punter who can hold as well as take care of kickoff duties and just boot out of the back of the end zone. 25, 25, 25, please. Also find a punt returner you can trust. It is just so maddeningly frustrating. And coaching, lane discipline on coverage, find corners on punt return that can actually keep gunners at bay and give your returners a chance without committing penalties, a.k.a. Chris Boyd's, because everyone talks about how bad the Vikings defense was this year and how inconsistent the offense was, especially the first 6 weeks of the season. But the special teams was the worst that I have ever seen it, and it's startling. And it costs the Vikings, and we're not even talking about Dan Bailey's missed kicks. It's just absolutely insane, but just a myriad of things that need to be fixed this offseason. So, great. Your thoughts. Vikings special teams historically bad this year. Let us know in the comment section below. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Want to support that work? Post some of Venmo. But until next time, Skol, production value.